Hi, NASCAR fans.
Don't we do that first?
Yeah, we do. Okay.
It's time to fasten
one of
your
these days
seatbelt and rev up that engine. It's time to go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is your weekly look inside the world of NASCAR. Now live, here's the pit crew, Steve Ronkowitz and Charlie Turner.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go on Pit Row, boys.
I should really let you do this. You know, for 13 years you did this stuff, and we didn't have these problems.
Well, you know,
now you got the rookie.
Right.
Here. Yeah.
That's all right.
Anyway, so as I started to say, hi, NASCAR fans. Welcome to our live NASCAR Hangout on Pit Row again this week. I'm Charlie Turner. That voice you heard a minute ago and face you saw is Steve Ronkowitz. Dan Beaver is also with us. Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Welcome, guys. Just came out of I thought, a pretty darn good race at Michigan International Speedway this past Sunday. Jimmy Johnson winning his, third out of the last four. Hendrick Motorsports getting their fifth in a row. It's all about Chevy season so far, Steve. Sorry.
Well, no, all the talk is that if not only Chevy, but if you don't have a Hendrick engine in your car, you're just you might as well forget it. They seem to be way ahead of the curve. I think it was actually I don't remember the quote, and one of you two probably may remember it better, whether it came from Carl Edwards or Biffle or one of the Roush guys was actually, now that I think it was Brad Keselowski was saying that Hendrick is a whole year ahead in development from everybody else, and I think that's probably pretty darn true when you look at the results.
Well, at the post-race press conference, Keselowski was asked about that, and asked about what, with 14 races down, if Penske had anything in the development cycle that could maybe make up this apparent, advantage that the Hendrick Chevys have. They have what they're going to have. We're going to be at a horsepower disadvantage for the whole year, and we'll have to do something else to beat them instead of just trying to, run with them horse to horse. So I know, Dan, you had an opinion on that. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think there's some tracks where the horsepower difference, it's always going to be that thing that pushes them over the top. But even on the unrestricted intermediate speedway, the mile-and-a-half tracks, you can make up for some of that in handling. So I don't know that it's fair to blame it all on or give all the credit to the engines. I think they also figured out something in how to get that power to the track with the new body style. So it's just a combination of the two things, and this happens from time to time. Someone just runs away for a little while, and then the other guys figure out what they're doing, and they catch up relatively quickly. So I'd be surprised if it stays this way another 2 months.
Actually, in the old days, they didn't leave it up to the teams to even it out. NASCAR would do something the following week. They'd take some spoiler away usually from a manufacturer. They'd take spoiler away from Chevys, or something like that. In this case, what would they do? They just take spoiler away from the Hendricks-powered Chevys?
Yeah, that's part of the problem. Is if what's happening is in the engine, they don't know what Hendrick has found until they catch them playing outside. Unless they catch them playing outside the rules, so there really isn't much of a way to level the playing field. So if Hendrick really did find something in the power plant, they could be. It could be a long couple of months.
Well, the other thing is that the other teams can do is hire some very beautiful young women to infiltrate some of the engine shops of Hendrick, and bedroom talk has a way of filtering throughout race teams. I think that's the other way to try and figure it out.
It's the James Bond scenario.
That's right.
But here's the other. You want to talk about scenarios like conspiracy scenarios? How about this one? What if the Ford teams are sandbagging for the chase? I mean, they got their cars in already, right? They're in. I mean, Keselowski, Logano, those guys are in. The Roush guys, I guess Carl Edwards is in. They just laying back, and then they're going to spring it on them in the chase.
That'll only be effective if NASCAR gives them the rules change that they want. Otherwise, everybody starts from scratch once they get to Chicagoland.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the other thing about this, we were talking, saying that Hendrick the Hendrick Chevys have all the advantage. They seem to have all the advantage over all the other Chevy drivers except one, and that one being rookie Kyle Larson, who was your pick last week, I think, Steve, to win this race, and probably would have won it if he'd just gotten shuffled just a little bit different at the end of that race.
Well, there's no doubt in anyone's mind, I think, that Kyle Larson has a huge amount of talent and a huge upside, seems to be able to take what was a team in disarray and at least focus one car on the ability to have good finishes, and that's not to take anything away from Jamie McMurray, but
no, actually that whole team has risen, I think.
Yeah, I think it has, and it just, you can't give all the credit to Kyle Larson coming on board, but maybe it was one of those things that the addition by subtraction of Juan Pablo Montoya plus the addition by addition of Kyle Larson has increased that team's ability to make horsepower to get cars on the track that are better. So combinations are amazing. We've talked about that for how many years, about the driver crew chief combination, and some work, some don't, and it may be one of those type of things. But not to digress and not to poke at you, Charlie, but what the hell's up with Toyota? They seem to have nothing.
They look relatively lost to me right now, and I don't know what the problem is there.
They look pretty good at Le Mans, and maybe other R&D.
They had problems there too. I mean, they had problems
early on. Yeah, they looked good though. They had power. They had horsepower.
That was a fun race to watch. I got a chance to watch most of the daytime coverage on Saturday, and it was interesting. It was really well. They do that coverage really well. Most of it's in car, but there's still some long shots, and that track's just cool. I mean, that's very cool. That's the one race we talked before about. If there's one race you could cover, I think somebody said Monaco. Mine would be Le Mans. That's where I'd go.
Absolutely, I'd find myself a house somewhere about halfway down the Mulsanne Straight, and I would take up drinking wine.
There you go. There you go. All right, so we're not going to Le Mans next week, but we are going to a road course. We're going to Sonoma. Things will be a little different at Sonoma than they were at Michigan for sure. What are your thoughts? What are you guys thinking? I know, Dan, again, you have some theories overall about the road courses and how significant they are this year.
I think they're hugely significant this year, both of them combined. I think we have 5 drivers who have won on road courses in the last 5 years who are not currently in the chase, who are outside the top 15. So if one of those drivers manages to get into the chase, one of the drivers outside the top 15 now, because Kurt Busch is out there, so that moves that mark, you're looking at yet another driver getting knocked out that would be there in the points. We had Truex winning the 2013 Sonoma race. Boyer won at Sonoma in 2012. Ambrose has 2 road course victories. Stewart's most recent road course win came at the Glen in 2009, and Casey Kane at Sonoma that same year. So you've got some people.
Yeah, and I'll throw another one in there, and this is another Ganassi team. Jamie McMurray is really good on road courses and has been at Sonoma. I think the last 5 years, I wouldn't be afraid of calling him this week.
He is, and Allmendinger and that team went to test there, and I think a couple of guys went to test at Sonoma recently because they see this as an opportunity race. And I don't know how much you learn at Sonoma that carries over to Watkins Glen. Sonoma is a much more technical track than Watkins Glen is, but the ability to turn right and left is going to serve someone really well. You might get one of the previous winners to win one of these 2 races, but I think the other one is going to go to one of these seeming dark horses.
Do we have any? I know I haven't seen an entry list for this weekend. Do we have any ringers showing up? Is Ron Fellows going to be there? Borset, any of those guys?
Said in the 32.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. And the 32, whether or not he'll be relevant, that the 32 hasn't been with him at the wheel in the last couple of years, but he's gotten banged about quite a bit. So I think if he manages to stay out of trouble, but that's going to be a big task this year. None of the rookies have Cup experience on the road courses. There's going to be a lot of off-road racing. I believe, from the rookies. And when they come back on, God help whoever was behind them.
Well, Boris is kind of a friend of ours, and we've had him on the show, I think, every year, either pre or post Sonoma, and he gets shuffled out. Poor guy.
Yeah, well, some of it's his own making. He's just as impressive as everybody else. So.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he doesn't. He hasn't had many friends throughout most of those races over the last 5 years. But I think your point's well taken. The fact that the rookie class is not, generally speaking, the greatest group of road course racers. Justin Allgaier, to his own admission, is not a road course racer any stretch of the imagination.
No, he did win an ARCA at a road course.
Yeah, he did win ARCA road course.
New Jersey Motorsports Park.
And actually, he ran pretty well at Road America last year, I think. It was last year than the year before. So, but by his own admission, he is not a road course racer. So the point well taken that these guys could create a fair amount of havoc once they leave the friendly confines of the tarmac.
Yeah, and I think the point stands without the next thing I'm going to say. But you have to be careful what racers say about themselves. Allgaier enters the weekend with a 7-race top 10 streak in nationwide competition on road courses. So for him to say that he's not a good road course racer, yeah, he's probably better than Dillon, better than Larson, better than at least as good as Cole Witt. And this could
probably
be
better than Matt Kenseth.
Yeah. This could be the week for him to get top rookie honors.
Who, Matt Kenseth?
No, Allgaier. Yeah.
But we don't have Montoya this year, so that takes one of the guys who's been certainly a contender the last couple of years out of the mix.
Yeah. Yeah, and you still have Ambrose, but Ambrose reality's kind of set in the last couple of years. He still runs strong, but he doesn't seem nearly as perfect as he did. Top 10s are more likely than top 5s, and it's been a while since he was in contention for a win at Sonoma.
And also, Dan, you said that Tony Stewart hasn't won on a road course since 2009. So you're looking at 10 races, 10-ish races since he has had a win on a road course. So you almost look at him as not much of a road course factor to get the job done to seal that deal. So, you know, with all the other stuff going on with Stewart, he may or may not be a factor in this thing.
Yeah, and he's got the second most road course wins in history behind Gordon. Most of those came at Watkins Glen, only 2 at Sonoma. Gordon's got 9, Stewart's got 7. So you got to believe that he wants to catch Gordon if he possibly can and take that. But I think his difficulties on road courses kind of dates back to, was it 2011 when he decided to teach Brian Vickers a lesson about blocking and ended up parked on top of the tire wall?
Yeah.
It's been downhill ever since.
Well, while we're talking about road courses, I'm going to use this as a segue into our Shell Saver Card comment of the week. I put up a fast lap question every week to try to spur comments, just to give people an idea of maybe something to talk about that they can try to impress us with their wittiness about NASCAR and stuff. And this week I put up a 3-part fast lap question. Here you go. All right. Was JJ like watching history or paint drying? Sonoma or the Glen? Your choice. And then Casey Kane or Casey Kasem? Okay, so you just put a comment about any part of that or all of it, whatever you want to do, make something up, or comment about anything else you want to comment about, and you'll be eligible for our weekly giveaway of a $50 Shell gift card. Compliments of Shell gasoline. Steve's got to read about that, tell you all about our little contest every week.
Yeah, make sure you submit your Shell Saver Card comment of the day. You can take home that $50 Shell gift card. Anytime Joey Logano, driver of that 22 Shell Pennzoil Fusion, wins a 2014 Cup race, Shell Saver Card holders will save 22 cents a gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-rich gasoline or Shell diesel just by using that Shell Saver Card on Wednesday, or Wednesday if you prefer after the race, valid up to 25 gallons. Visit shell.us/Wednesday for details. And I will take Casey Kasem 1,000,000 times over Casey Kane.
Why is that? You a big Casey Kasem fan, really?
Just because I can keep my feet on the ground while reaching for the stars.
Oh, wow. I like that quote. I'm going to go with I'm watching history and Jimmy Johnson rather than watching paint dry. I really don't get. There's a lot of vehemently negative comment out there about Jimmy Johnson's ruining NASCAR, and I'll never watch another boring NASCAR race again. And he keeps winning. Of course, these are all from Earnhardt Senior fans who never said a word when he was winning all the time. But I watch Johnson and watch the interviews and watch him on the track. I don't see any negative anywhere. I mean, I can't see. He doesn't race anybody wrong. He's fast. He's aggressive. He doesn't back down. He doesn't cause any controversy. He just wins frickin' races. And I don't see the negative there at all.
Well, then I'll take the Glen over Sonoma. I think the fast speeds at the Glen and ability to go through those corners a little quicker than the tight turns at Sonoma is a little more conducive to NASCAR stock cars. But that said, I love both road courses. I love stock cars on road courses.
You're preaching to the choir there. Steve and I have both been lobbying for a third road course for years now. Beth Ann's joined us. Beth Ann, what's your take one of those or all three of those fast lap questions and give me an answer. Which one? What do you got to say?
I think Jimmy Johnson's like watching history. I mean, everybody talks about him like, they're bored because he's winning so much, but the truth is, when they look back, they're going to say he's one of the greatest racers ever. Their opinion will change when he's history. So when we're seeing it now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think my friend Chuck Sharpie, who's a longtime friend of the show and everything, I talked to him Saturday, actually, before we went up to MIS on Sunday, and he said he doesn't think Johnson's going for 7. He thinks he's going for 8. He wants to leave those guys in the dust. I think he's right.
Not sure 8's the top number, even.
Yeah.
They don't show any sign of slowing down.
I think Jimmy Johnson is going to be one of those guys who will never be appreciated until such time as he's gone from the sport. And you can look back on him and see what he has done, whether it's 6 champions or 7 or 8 or 9 or however many it is. And in retrospect, people will look at him and, oh, wow, yeah, he was something. But he's just good fodder right now because people don't like people who win too much or win too early, and he's done both.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that. He'll be more appreciated once he's gone. And I'm trying to think of a comparable figure in sports. Can anybody think of one? Somebody who was like that, who was just didn't realize what they had till he was gone, kind of thing, in any sport.
Well, I think Jeff Gordon is going through that a little bit, even though he's not gone yet. But he's more appreciated now that he's not running in the front for what he did in the past than he was while he was doing it. And then, everybody loved Richard Petty, everybody loved David Pearson, but not everybody loved Cale Yarborough, Bobby Allison, Darrell Waltrip, until they were gone, and then their place in the sport, their place in history, became a little better defined.
To step outside of the racing for a second, I think the one person that just pops into my mind is Jim Brown in football. And he's somebody that really didn't get a whole heck of a lot of recognition outside of Cleveland during his playing days, but in retrospect, many, many people now look back as he was probably the best running back ever in the history of pro football.
Yeah, I think it was Pele.
Pele.
I'll give you that. World Cup shout out.
World Cup. I mean, he's gone, right? He was great. Nobody, at least in North America, was watching that until he became the first star of the pro soccer league was here then. He was with New York, right? I think.
New York Galaxy, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
I don't know why I know that.
That was long past his prime. It was long before the days when those young soccer superstars came over here to play in the Major League Soccer league.
Maybe Hulk Hogan from the wrestling world.
There you go, Hulk Hogan. I like that.
We start throwing out random stuff.
Hey, I've got a question here
How
for
about Wolfman Jack? Everybody's talking about Casey Kasem.
There you go. I got a question for Beth Ann here. Now, I saw the video of you and Charlie when the pace car ride with Greg Biffle, and I was sorely disappointed in you that you didn't, dig into the hot question of the week, which was, where are you going? Are you going to stay at Roush? Are you going to go someplace else? Were you afraid he was going to hit the ejector seat, or you didn't hit any of those probing questions?
Well, basically I was just going, wow, this is pretty cool. So, yeah, I wasn't really thinking questions. So.
And the part of it you didn't see, Steve, and nobody saw, was the first pace car ride. We weren't in the first one. We were going to get in the second one. First one was in a new 2015 Mustang that they had there. And then this guy from Ford showed up about halfway through that drive. And when Biffle got back in the pits to pick up the next group, which was supposed to be us, the guy from Ford said, no, that we don't want that car out there. We don't want images of that car anywhere. Nothing like that. So we didn't get the ride in the 15. We had to go in a 14.
Oh, heaven forbid.
14. I think it was a Celine Mustang. It's pretty nice. You want to see a sardine thing, you should have seen me trying to get in the back seat behind Biffle.
I just thought that the guys in the back were freaking out because when Biffle was talking about his ride, he was driving along 140 miles an hour and taking his hand off the wheel and pointing.
Pointing at things. It was cool. He also said right before he's rolling out, not a long time, and he didn't wait. He says, you might want to find a seatbelt. He says, because if we hit the wall, it hurts.
Yeah.
So everybody fumbles immediately for the seat. But it was fun. That was a very cool experience. I'm glad I got a chance to video that. So that was fun. And Greg was great. He and Beth Ann got to be good friends before the 2 laps were over.
Close personal friends.
Close personal friends.
All right. Well, I was just a little disappointed that there wasn't some of those.
No journalistic questions.
Well, yeah, I was waiting for the probing questions, and to see what would happen. But
I was just glad she wasn't speechless.
And sitting there with your microphone, or
yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if they're giving rides to media, they would have to expect to be questioned while they're riding, wouldn't they?
Steve will appreciate this, though. So it's Beth Ann talking to Biffle, right? She immediately starts telling him about her trip around Talladega and, what she learned there. Not that Biffle's teaching her about give him a lesson about Talladega. It was pretty good, pretty cool.
Was he duly impressed?
Well, I think that's what spurred him to talk, and say things. I was just trying to get a conversation going so we weren't just all sitting there.
Yep. That was very cool. Any other before we move on to fantasy talk? Any other comments for anything that happened this week?
I think it's just pretty amazing how quickly the conversation switched from Johnson may not make the chase to, oh my God, Johnson is the devil. I know we hit on some, but boy, things change quickly in this sport.
Yeah, he's ruining the sport, isn't he?
Yep. Well, he wasn't ruining it for the first 12 races or whatever it was, but he sure as hell put a kibosh to the last 3.
I have been impressed. I will say this, and again, it continued this week with Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s season. He was a contender again this week, and quietly contending. And he had some very interesting comments after the first practice on Friday. They had, I can't remember who all was up there. I'm sure Harvick was there because he was fast. Junior was there, and I think maybe Keselowski. But Junior was Gordon. Junior was very analytic in explaining the track and how Michigan has, how smooth it is and how it's held up well, and talked about the differences between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and how there's less sun on 3 and 4, or more sun on 3 and 4, so that's coming apart a little bit more, and there's a little bit less grip there. It was really, really, vintage sports answer, and a few years ago you wouldn't have expected that from Dale Earnhardt Jr. I was duly impressed.
Don't you think he has gotten more comfortable in his position as the face of popularity in NASCAR? Not necessarily the face of NASCAR, but face of popularity of NASCAR. Mm-hmm. And I think he's kind of grown into that a little bit? He's become much more at ease at what his role is in this sport.
Yeah, I think so, and also Kevin Harvick got a chance to show his colors again after the race on Sunday, and he was very trite and contrite, I guess would be the word. And is there a race team out there that is in a worse collective mood than Stewart Haas Racing? I mean, you talk about a bunch of scowly ass people. All four of those drivers are like that.
And they're not running badly. They're just they're finishing badly. But think of what it'd be like if they were all going through the kind of season that Kurt Busch has been going through.
Right.
Well,
what we predicted at the beginning of the year, that they could self-implode, and I'm not sure it's still not possible.
Well, it looks to me like it's possible. They don't seem to be going after each other yet at this point, but at some time that anger is going to turn into itself, I think, at least from one of them. I don't know where it's going to show up. My suspicion would be the 41 car, but we'll see.
That's only because there's history there. But Tony Stewart was at Toledo Speedway on Friday night for the fastest short track show in the world. By his own tweet, he admitted that he was there, but to a man, I never saw anybody that said they saw him. So if he was there, he was pretty much hiding out from the fan base and from pretty much everybody. But which was kind of unusual because Tony Stewart does like to be seen. Doesn't like to be talked to per se, but he does like to be seen.
Well, before Dan just walked away from his seat, so we can't.
I was going to say Dan just disappeared.
Look, we're talking about fantasy, but the fantasy expert just left. You're in trouble. You're in trouble, folks.
I don't know if you guys saw a little Greyhound head over my shoulder.
I did, Dan. It was a great shot. I wish you wouldn't have moved her. Just all of a sudden, his head popped up. I'm like, oh man, that's. I think the Greyhound was telling us that it knew it was time for Dan's segment.
Hey guys, aren't you supposed to talk to him now?
That was funny. All right, so we're going to our first road course of the year. So I would, there's obviously some combined stats you can use between the two road courses since they are the only two road courses. But those two road courses, as you alluded to earlier, Dan, are about as different as you could get in character.
They are, and for most of the racers, it doesn't matter. When you spend half your time in the grass or dirt and half your time on the pavement, it doesn't matter what the pavement's like. But there are a few drivers that it does make a difference to. Brad Keselowski is certainly one of those. He'll be much better at Watkins Glen than he is at Sonoma. Gordon recently has been much better at Sonoma than he is at Watkins Glen. So there are a couple of drivers. I think the more sophisticated they get, the more likely they are to be able to tell the difference between these two tracks. But for now, we're going to Sonoma. There are drivers that I think are going to be some pleasant surprises, ones that you don't necessarily think of. Earlier, we talked about there are 5 drivers who are currently outside the top 15 in points who've won in the last 5 years. And when Martin Truex Jr. won and when Clint Bowyer won, they certainly weren't handicapped very high for those weeks. They weren't. You weren't going to expect them to run well, beat Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Juan Pablo, Marcus Ambrose. So that same thing could happen, and we may not know who it's going to be coming into it. But we do have some drivers who you don't necessarily think of when you come to road courses, but are extremely strong. Joey Logano is good at Sonoma. A.J. Allmendinger's been good at Sonoma and pretty good at Watkins Glen as well. So you've got some. This is an opportunity race, I think, for fantasy players as well as for the drivers. If you avoid those marquee drivers, which you're going to want to do anyway because of allocation management in the case of the Yahoo game and salary cap games, these other drivers are going to be cheaper than the marquee drivers. So unless you're locked in at a price where you can't get rid of a Jimmy Johnson, it's going to make sense to bench them for a week and come out with kind of a well thought out group of dark horses.
That's interesting. On a salary cap game, what's like the minimum number you would have to be at, or I guess minimum number you'd have to be at to not drop Jimmy Johnson?
No, the one I play most is the NASCAR.com game, and I acquired him for $1 less than his current range, so I probably wouldn't drop him. And because he's a decent, he's certainly a decent choice at Sonoma. He enters with a 5-race top 10 streak, one back in 2010 when Marcus Ambrose had his problem, stalled going up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Finished only 9th last year, but that's good enough to not get him off the roster. If he had finished in the 20s in the last couple of weeks, it might be worth taking that $1 hit and get rid of him and reacquire him so that you could put someone on there that's more of a dark horse. At Sonoma proper, you've got 4 drivers who enter with at least 3-race top 10 streaks. So even though this is considered a wild card, the cream tends to rise to the top. They get their strategy right, and when they miss on the strategy, they fall from a top 5 contender or potential winner to a top 10 contender instead of falling completely out of the running like they would on a unrestricted intermediate speedway. Should we go directly into picks then?
Our personal picks, or who you're going to advise? What's your Yahoo team going to look like this week? I mean, I would think a tough one to pick is probably the A driver, isn't it?
What I was just about to say. Group A is going to be difficult, mostly because you've got some good choices, but you don't know exactly who to bench. Gordon, Johnson are among that group of drivers who come in with streaks of top 5s, but you probably don't want to start them because you know they're going to be good on the unrestricted intermediate speedways, right, especially given what we talked about earlier with their engines. So Clint Boyer could be your most pleasant surprise. He has 3 consecutive top 5s, including the victory in 2012. He's got 6 top 10s in his last 7 races there, and has never really struggled, but not doing so good this year. So what's going to take precedent? Is skill going to trump the problems at Toyota, or are the problems at Toyota going to trump the skill? And if that's the case, you might want to jump down to Kurt Busch, who also comes in with 3 consecutive top 5s and a victory back in 2011, and hope that he stays out of trouble. So I think that's your pick this week. Is it going to be Clint Boyer or Kurt Busch, and which of them is most likely to stay out of trouble? Avoid Kevin Harvick because he's going to be a better, more predictable value later on. Certainly avoid Matt Kenseth, who is not a road course racer. So your choice is: do I take a marquee driver, Johnson, Gordon? Do I take a dark horse, Boyer, or Busch? And if I do, which of those 2 am I going to take? Is Johnson going to finish better than Gordon, or is Boyer going to finish better than Busch? Group B, you've got a logical choice. Even though the bloom is off the rose, you've got to take Marcus Ambrose. His crash at Watkins Glen and broken transmission at Sonoma in his first outing there way back when are the only times that he's really stumbled at all, and a top 10 finish is good enough for to get him started. Martin Truex Jr., I think, is another good pick. He's been running strong here lately. He's got 2 top 10s in the last 3 Sonoma races. But if you add in his Watkins Glen record, he has 5 top 10s in the last 6. So obviously knows how to get around. This is a track that, or road courses, you don't have to have the horsepower, so it's the ultimate driver's track. And then A.J. Allmendinger, and I think your 2 picks are going to come from those 3 drivers. Allmendinger, they tested here in June. He enters with a 9-race top 15 streak on the combined road courses. Last time he was at Sonoma was in 2012, and he finished 9th. So I think he's a good lock for something right on either side of the 10th place barrier. Jump down to C. And I think this week you got to go with the road ringer. You got to go with Boris Said because the 32 is strong enough to get them a top 20 finish. Might get them a top 15. It's less likely that Dillon and Larson are going to finish in the top 15 this week than on some of the unrestricted intermediate speedways. And Seth is going to finish close enough to them to make him a good allocation management play. But if you don't like Seth because the Road Ringers' lack of chemistry with their team, their one-offsmanship, then I would jump down and get Allgaier because of that 7-race top 10 streak in nationwide competition that I mentioned earlier. So I think that's your 2 picks for your 2 choices this week.
Is Danica a C driver?
Danica's a C driver, and right now, and I've got her handicapped 7th or 8th out of the Group C. Really? She didn't do well in nationwide. She certainly hasn't done anything to improve our opinion of her in Cup competition, where the road courses are concerned. So, you would think with her Indy background, she would have some leg up, but it hasn't played out that way.
Yeah, I would have thought so without looking, but I did not do my homework, so that's why we listen to you. Okay, so we're going to put everybody on the spot. You got to make a pick this week. Beth Ann, you get to go first. Who's your pick?
I'm going with Kurt Busch.
I thought you'd take Biffle again.
No, Kurt Busch.
Kurt Busch. All right, Steve-O, who you got?
I am going with Marcos Ambrose.
All right, I am as well. I got to go with alligator meat on this one. How about you, Dan?
Jeff Gordon. Restarts won't play as big a role this week as they do on other tracks. He gets the strategy right, he wins.
By the way, we're in California, so we're kind of close to Las Vegas. If there was going to be I put together a prop bet in Vegas. It would be you have to pick between which of these nightmares is most likely to be the one that wakes up Marcus Ambrose when he has a nightmare. One would be being chased by an alligator. The other one would be switching off his ignition while going uphill at Sonoma. Which one do you think wakes him up more often?
You got to go with that Sonoma one.
I think so too. My God, but it's got to be one of the great sports gaffes of all time. Okay, so enjoyed it all, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our live hangout here on Pit Row this week. We'll do this again next week when we go. Where do we go next week? We're going to
Kentucky.
Kentucky, that's right. Kentucky, so another 1.5-mile track. But this week we'll enjoy the road racing out in California. Our friend Bruce Simmons is out there for On Pit Row. Going to take some photos for us. Hopefully put up some social media content. So we look forward to that. Thanks everybody for joining us. You can follow. Of course, you can see the replay of this hangout on our Facebook page, on Pit Row on Facebook. You can go to the onpitrow.com website, go to our YouTube page, Yahoo, whatever that is, YouTube, on Pit Row. So lots of ways to watch us again. Thanks again. We'll see you all next week.
About the world of NASCAR. Come back next week and join the pit crew, Steve and Charlie, and go On Pit Row. On Pit Row is a presentation of Bench Racing Productions.
I'm Tony Stewart. You're listening to the fastest 2 hours in radio with Charlie and Steve. You're on Pit Row. Take it from me, don't speed.
This is On Pit Row. On Pit Row.
See you guys.